There are memories we summon consciously, those we retrieve through effort, like pulling books from a mental shelf. But then, there are the ones that ambush us. A taste, a scent, the softness of an old fabric. And suddenly, we're not here anymore. We've fallen through a crack in time. Marcel Proust called this the involuntary memory, and In Search of Lost Time, he made it one of the central forces of human existence. The famous scene with the Madeleine dipped in tea is not just poetic. It's a philosophical declaration. The past, he tells us, is never gone. It sleeps within us, waiting to be awakened by the most ordinary of triggers. But there's a haunting quality to this, because the moment the past re-enters so vividly, it doesn't just complement the present, it competes with it. And all too often, it wins. In this invisible contest, the present feels pale and insufficient, while the past becomes a vivid realm we long to return to, even if it never truly existed as we remember. Proust's obsession with memory reveals something deeply uncomfortable about the way we experience time. Chronological time, clocks, calendars, deadlines, is shallow compared to what he called inner time, the time of emotion, of recollection, of the soul. When a memory involuntarily returns, it doesn't ask for permission. It surges up from within, bypassing logic, cutting straight into the emotional core. And that emotional weight can anchor us so heavily in the past that the present barely registers. We don't just remember a moment, we relive it. The danger begins when we stop living in the world around us and start residing in those resurrected fragments of yesterday. This isn't nostalgia in the usual sense. It's an emotional occupation. We become colonized by our own history, not through conscious reflection, but through the seductive power of moments that resurface uninvited, coated in longing and resistant to time. What makes involuntary memory so dangerous is its intimacy. It doesn't just remind us of the past. It offers us a portal, a return, a chance to be someone we once were. And in a world where the present is often marked by uncertainty, routine, or dull repetition, that promise becomes addictive. Why struggle with what's in front of you when a memory offers immediate emotional richness? Proust understood this seduction too well. He knew that our inner world often prefers the intensity of what was over the ambiguity of what is. So we begin to curate our lives around these returns, seeking out old songs, familiar places, long-lost sensations, not to enrich the present, but to escape it. And this is where the spiral deepens. We live not to create new moments, but to echo old ones. We chase a lost time instead of inhabiting real time. Slowly, our identity erodes into a mosaic of memories, and our capacity for presence, true, raw presence, begins to vanish. But memory, Proust reminds us, is not truth. It is creation. The past we return to is never the past that was. It's a version, shaped by feeling, edited by longing, smoothed over by the soft erosion of pain. Involuntary memory gives us the past, yes, but not to guide us, only to seduce us. And if we're not careful, we become prisoners of our own subconscious time machine. The tyranny is subtle, almost beautiful. We think we're reconnecting with who we were, but in reality, we're disconnecting from who we are. The Madeleine, the tea, the music, the light, they become not just triggers of memory, but symbols of exile. We're here, but not fully. The room we sit in is less vivid than the one inside our mind. And so we must ask, if the past arrives without invitation, are we obligated to welcome it? Or is there wisdom in letting it pass through us, gently, without settling, so we can remain rooted in the only time that truly belongs to us? Now, nostalgia often disguises itself as love. Love for a time, a place, a version of ourselves. But Milan Kundera saw through this disguise. In the unbearable lightness of being, He peels away the romanticism and exposes nostalgia for what it often is, a form of emotional cowardice. To him, nostalgia isn't just memory with affection. It's refusal. A refusal to engage with the uncertainties of the present, a denial of the messiness of now. We tend to believe that remembering is inherently noble, even healing. But Kundera's challenge is sharp. What if remembering is actually a subtle way of hiding? What if, in exalting the past, we are turning our backs on the rawness of today? Nostalgia becomes a museum in which we choose to live, surrounded by carefully curated relics of how things used to be. And, perhaps more dangerously, how we wish they had been. And while we admire the display, life passes silently outside the window. Kundera doesn't attack memory itself. He interrogates the weight we give it. He suggests that the more meaning we assign to past experiences, the more we burden ourselves with them. We don't just carry memories, we carry their interpretations, their emotional residues, their unfinished conversations. And slowly, the past becomes not just a backdrop, but the stage we refuse to leave. Nostalgia, then, is not a gentle longing. It's paralysis disguised as sentiment. It persuades us that there was a before that was truer, simpler, more meaningful. And once we accept that idea, the present loses legitimacy. We stop trying to build significance now because we're too busy preserving what once was. Kundera paints nostalgia as dangerous because it's seductive. It flatters us, comforts us, gives us the illusion of continuity. But in doing so, it demands a price: the abandonment of the present as a living space. What's most unsettling in Kundera's reflection is that nostalgia doesn't just distort time, it distorts identity. When we indulge in it, we're not simply recalling events. We're reaffirming an old self, a self we've possibly outgrown but are too afraid to release. It's easier to admire who we were in a distant summer than to face the ambiguity of who we are becoming. Nostalgia gives us that clarity, but it's a false clarity, built not on truth, but on selective memory. And so we begin to edit not only our past, but also our present, to make it conform to a narrative that keeps us comfortable. Kundera forces us to ask a painful question. Are we building a life, or simply maintaining an illusion of one? And if we're honest, we might find that much of what we call remembering is actually resisting. Resisting the passage of time, resisting change, resisting the very essence of life, which is motion. The tragedy of nostalgia, in Kundera's view, is that it offers the illusion of emotional depth while keeping us emotionally shallow. It asks for no risk, no action, no engagement, only contemplation. And while it may feel profound to dwell in what once was, it's ultimately a retreat. The past in this light is not a wellspring but a trap, one we willingly walk into, comforted by familiarity, sedated by emotional echoes. And yet, those echoes can never become music again. The real challenge, the philosophical challenge, is not to remember less, but to remember without surrender. To let the past inform us without possessing us. Nostalgia is not evil, but it becomes toxic when it replaces vision with longing. Kundera invites us to reclaim our present, not by rejecting our memories, but by refusing to let them monopolize our attention. The world we once lived in is gone. The question is, will we choose to live in this one? Who are we really? When we strip away titles, roles, and even beliefs, we're left with something far more elusive. A self built, in large part, by memory. What we've lived becomes the blueprint of who we think we are. But this foundation, though seemingly solid, is made of fragile recollections, biased stories, and emotional snapshots that are often incomplete. The danger emerges when we stop treating memory as a source of insight and start treating it as identity itself. I am the person who went through this. I was happy back then. That version of me was real. These are not just reflections. They're declarations, and they begin to calcify our sense of self. We carry old pain like it's proof of depth. We wear past achievements like armor. Slowly, we cease becoming and start preserving. The self becomes a museum, and we, its reluctant curators. Proust and Kundera, in different ways, both warn us of this fixation. Proust shows how memory invades us, shaping how we feel and act, often without our consent. Kundera shows how nostalgia turns memory into identity performance, a way of avoiding the discomfort of reinvention. When we cling to the narrative of who we were, we quietly reject the uncertainty of becoming someone new. And yet, growth only happens in that uncertainty. There is a tragic irony in being so loyal to our former selves that we deny the person emerging now. We end up living in reference to an outdated version of ourselves, comparing every current feeling to a past one, every decision to a former ideal. Our identity becomes stagnant, not because we lack potential, but because we're too attached to our own history to allow transformation. Memory was meant to guide us, not define us. But there's a subtler layer here, one that haunts many without them realizing it. The person we remember ourselves to be is rarely accurate. Our internal biography is a crafted narrative, polished over time, edited for coherence, drama, and meaning. We highlight some moments, erase others, and call it truth. And then we become beholden to it. The story of who we were begins to dictate who we can be. I used to be passionate. I was once fearless. That was the real me. These phrases sound harmless, but they carry the weight of expectation. Not from others, but from ourselves. We begin performing to meet the standards of our own memory. We chase our former confidence, our earlier joy, as if they were external things we could recapture, rather than evolving states of being. This creates an invisible prison, not built by trauma or failure, but by our unwillingness to rewrite ourselves. The freedom we seek often hides behind the self we refuse to let go of. Identity, when fused too tightly with memory, becomes a kind of death, a stillness where motion once lived. The self, in its truest form, is not a fossil. It's a process, always unfolding, shaped not just by what happened, but by what we dare to imagine next. To break free from this loop, we must question the emotional safety we find in clinging to old versions of ourselves. We must be willing to disappoint our own past, to evolve beyond its expectations. Memory can be a lighthouse, but it can also be a leash. And sometimes, the most courageous act is not remembering who we were, but allowing that memory to fade, so that something else, something unknown, can emerge in its place. The self isn't something we find. It's something we build. And sometimes, we have to demolish parts of it to begin again. Memory is not a recording. It's a reconstruction. Every time we recall a moment, we reshape it ever so slightly. A word forgotten, a feeling exaggerated, a flaw smoothed out. Over time, these subtle edits accumulate, until what we remember is no longer what happened, but what we needed it to be. Both Proust and Kundera were intimately aware of this phenomenon. They didn't trust memory as a window to truth. They treated it as a mirror, reflecting not reality, but desire. This is why the past so often feels golden in comparison to the present. It's not because life was truly better. It's because the version we've preserved has been purified of its dullness, its chaos, its discomforts. We keep the glow, discard the shadows. The result? We end up comparing a romanticized memory to a raw and unfiltered now. And of course, reality can never win that contest. The mind is not just forgetful. It is selective in its loyalty. Pain fades or is reframed. Joy, on the other hand, is often inflated, given symbolic weight it may not have had in the moment itself. We turn casual afternoons into sacred memories. We elevate old relationships into myth. We give past versions of ourselves a kind of innocence or clarity that likely never existed. And this illusion, however comforting, is treacherous. Because when we begin to believe that the best parts of life are behind us, we unconsciously stop looking for beauty in what surrounds us now. It's not that life has lost its brilliance. It's that our perception has been hijacked by a curated past. Like a photograph edited beyond recognition, our memories can become dangerous art, pleasing to the eye, but distorting the truth. What's more, the illusion of a better past doesn't just affect how we see the world. It affects how we act in it. We begin to make decisions based on longing rather than clarity. We avoid risks because nothing seems worth disrupting the memory of how things used to be. We find ourselves paralyzed by comparison, unable to fully invest in the present because we've internalized the belief that it can never measure up. This mindset is not harmless nostalgia. It is psychological sabotage. The more we idolize the past, the more we undercut our capacity to evolve. Life becomes a loop, not of events, but of emotional references. We stop growing not because we lack opportunity, but because we believe growth can't possibly deliver the same feeling as recollection. But that's the trap. Memory doesn't ask us to participate. It only asks us to observe. And so, we watch our lives from a distance instead of stepping into them fully. To escape this illusion, we have to confront something painful. The past we cling to never existed in the way we remember. It was messier, quieter, more uncertain. We've turned it into a fiction because it serves a need: to feel grounded, to feel safe, to feel like we once had control. But we cannot afford to let that fiction become our compass. The truth is, memory lies, not maliciously, but instinctively, bending itself around the contours of our longing. The more we chase those idealized moments, the more estranged we become from reality. And so the challenge is not to forget the past, but to deflate it, to strip it of its illusions, to see it not as better, but simply as gone, and to recognize that meaning isn't something we recover, but something we make. Here, now imperfect, yes, but real. There comes a point when we must ask ourselves, what is the past really for? Is it a place to dwell in, or a place to learn from? Both Proust and Kundera, in their own ways, suggest that the past should not be a destination, but a passage, a whisper, not a script. The true art is not in forgetting the past, but in holding it lightly. The past must be honored, not inhabited. To break free from its grip is not an act of betrayal, but of courage. It means choosing to face the present without the safety net of nostalgia, without the armor of identity built on old moments. It means stepping out of the museum of memory and into the raw, unpredictable terrain of what comes next. And that is terrifying, but also profoundly alive. Because the present, though uncertain, is the only space where transformation is possible. This freedom begins when we shift our relationship with memory from possession to presence. We don't need to erase the past. We need to let it breathe without suffocating the now. One way to do that is by noticing when a memory is acting as a lens, rather than a light. Are we using it to illuminate something real, or to color it into something it's not? Are we invoking the past to connect, or to retreat? Living with memory doesn't mean being loyal to it. It means recognizing that it's one part of a larger inner landscape, not the entire territory. Just as a sailboat needs the memory of wind to move forward, it cannot move at all if it stays anchored. The past can be that wind, but it must never be the anchor. The key is discernment, knowing when a memory is guiding us and when it's holding us hostage. What does it look like, then, to live fully in the present while carrying the past with dignity? It looks like returning to the same song that once healed you, not to relive the pain, but to see how far you've come. It looks like remembering a version of yourself, not with yearning, but with gentleness. It looks like holding space for the beauty of what was, without demanding that today look or feel the same. To live like this is to reclaim authorship over your story. You are not just the result of past events. You are the narrator, the one who decides which parts become weight and which become wings. This shift requires honesty, patience, and a willingness to let go of the comfort that comes from living in emotional rewind. But the reward is immense. Presence, vitality, and the possibility of meaning that isn't secondhand. In the end, the invitation is not to reject memory, but to reframe it. Let it be a source of depth, not a blueprint for repetition. Let it inspire growth, not prevent it. The past shaped you, yes, but it does not have to define you. There is more of you ahead than behind. And though nostalgia may still whisper, as it always does, you can choose how loudly it speaks. The final freedom is the ability to be here, now, without apology, to meet this moment without comparing it to another. Life is not meant to be a rerun. It is meant to be lived forward, with the courage to forget just enough to be surprised again. To break free is to finally see that memory is not home. It's a map. And home is wherever your feet are standing. Maybe the most haunting thing about memory is not that it fades, but that it lingers. Quietly. Persistently. It clings to the corners of our days, shaping our moods, our choices, our fears. It disguises itself as identity, as meaning, as love. And yet, if we are not careful, it becomes a quiet thief, stealing not our past, but our present. But here's the truth we often forget. We are not obligated to live in yesterday's echo. The past may have carved deep rivers into our minds, but we are still the ones holding the oars. We are still allowed to choose, not what happened, but what we do with what remains. There is nothing wrong with remembering, nothing shameful about longing, but we cannot let nostalgia become a lullaby that rocks us to sleep while life passes by. There is too much waiting here, in this moment, in this breath, and the only thing memory cannot give us is now. So maybe it's time, not to forget, but to forgive the past for not being the present. To let go, not of the story, but of the need to keep repeating it. To walk forward, not because the past wasn't beautiful, but because we finally believe the future could be too.